people are going to realize that the Fed is locked in this monetary roach motel. They should have realized it when I first pointed it out, but they'll realize it now. And then everybody's going to want out of the dollar because we have massive trade deficit, massive budget deficits. You know, we have $3-4 trillion a year deficits, which will probably go up to $5 trillion a year plus in a Biden administration. There is no way the world is going to finance this. They're not going to divert all those resources so that Americans can have all this government for free. You know, the rest of the world has their own problems. The coronavirus or COVID-19 isn't just in America. A lot of other countries are dealing with it. They can't deal with their problems and our problems at the same time. So they're going to let the dollar go, and the dollar is going to collapse. And ultimately, that's going to send up consumer prices, inflation, interest rates here in the United States. And we are in for a rude awakening. You know, when the COVID-19 crisis first hit, right, a lot of the politicians were comparing this to World War II and like, oh, we're going to come together and we're going to beat this the way we won World War II, the way we beat the Nazis and Imperial Japan. We're all going to sacrifice and we're going to win this war on COVID-19. Except this time we're going to lose the war because we're not in a position to fight it. Because what our leaders don't understand is we actually did sacrifice to fight World War II, right? Nobody got a government bailout during World War II, right? You know, we actually raised taxes to finance World War II. We didn't cut them. In fact, in 1941, fewer than 10% of Americans paid income taxes. In 1942, better than a third of Americans paid income taxes. In fact, 1942 is when we actually started the withholding tax. We actually started taking income taxes out of people's paychecks. Before that, you only paid income taxes the following year. If you had income subject to tax, you know, let's say in 2019, you didn't send the government any money until April of 2020. But since the war was going on, they needed the money right away. So they started taking money right out of people's paychecks. Also, that wasn't enough. So the US government started borrowing money from American people by selling them war bonds. Middle-class Americans, you know, loaned the equivalent of trillions of dollars to the US government so the US government could afford to fight the war. That's the opposite of what we've done now. The US government has not raised taxes on anybody. And instead of borrowing money from the American people, the US government is loaning money to the American people. The people aren't sacrificing anything. They're being rewarded. How do you have a war without sacrifice? They're just printing money. If we tried to fight World War II by printing money, we would have lost the war. We would have been over really quickly. We'd all be speaking German here right now. But instead, you know, we financed it legitimately. Well, we're not doing it now because we can't afford it. Americans are broke. They weren't broke in 1940, despite the fact that we had just gone through the recession of the 1930s. Middle-class Americans were in better financial position in 1940 after a decade of the Great Recession than they are today. Americans are completely broke. They have nothing. They're living paycheck to paycheck. That's why when people had to leave, you know, they were fired from work because of COVID-19, they couldn't pay their bills. Look, a lot of people lost their jobs when World War II started, but they didn't have a problem paying their bills. Not only could they pay their bills without a job, they could pay the government bills because people had savings. Look, you don't think restaurants and movie theaters shut down in 1941 when 16 million customers disappeared and went off to fight a war? You know, when everybody was sacrificing and paying higher taxes and buying war bonds, they weren't going to restaurants. They weren't going to bars, right? They weren't going to traveling and taking vacations. But none of the people that own these bars or restaurants got one nickel from the U.S. government. Nobody got unemployment benefits. We were a rich country. We had rich people. Now we're a country full of, paupers. Everybody is broke, and the government is giving them money. But here's something that people don't understand. The government doesn't have any money. If the people are broke, then the government is also broke. Because while it's true that the people support the government cannot support the people. But we're pretending the government can support the people because we've got the Fed. We got the Fed printing money. But the Fed can only print money that has value so long as the rest of the world is dumb enough to hold dollars as a reserve currency. Well, my bet is our luck has run out. That we've now upped the ante so much that there is no way. I mean, the world is going to back away from this. They're not going to continue. And you can see the dollar is already going down now. It's been a slow, steady decline. Soon it's going to turn into a complete collapse. But before that does, you need to get your financial house in order and understand what it means for the global economy. And I think when the dollar loses its reserve currency status, it's not going to be replaced by the euro. It's not going to be replaced by the yen or the Chinese RMB. None of those currencies deserve reserve currency status either. No currency should have that status. We need real money, just the way we had before the dollar became the reserve, and that's gold. And that's where we're headed. Gold's going to be remonetized. Gold hit over, we're over $1,800 an ounce, right, a 9-year high in the price of gold. We're headed to 10,000, maybe more. We could go considerably higher. There's no way to remonetize gold in a meaningful way without gold being at least $10,000 an ounce, especially given all the money that's been created over the last decade. But when we go back to a sound monetary system, that is going to destroy an economy in the U.S. that is completely dependent on the reserve status of the dollar. That's the only way Americans can live beyond their means. That's how we can consume without producing. That's how we can borrow without saving, because the rest of the world produces for us. The rest of the world saves for us, and we just print money. Well, that privilege is going to come to an end, and we're going to have to deal with the consequences.